You cannot become whole without embracing your shadow. These words by Carl Jung resonate like a timeless echo, an invitation to explore the aspects of ourselves we often avoid. It's easy to seek the light, what is beautiful and accepted, but there is a depth within our being that can only be accessed when we face what has been forgotten, repressed, or ignored. This plunge into the shadow is not only a psychological process, it is a spiritual journey, a path toward wholeness. The shadow is not something to be feared, but a reflection of everything that is part of us, waiting for recognition. When we avoid confronting it, we create blockages, fears, and limitations that keep us from who we truly are. But when we choose to look at it with courage and curiosity, we discover that the shadow is not the opposite of light, it is its complement. Together, shadow and light make up the fullness of the human experience. On this journey of self-awareness, we are called to explore our deepest layers. The spiritual quest is not about escaping or transcending, but about integrating. Integrating the fears, desires, and contradictions that make us human. And it is in this integration that we find the true meaning of completeness. Today we will explore how embracing our shadow can unlock infinite potential and bring us closer to authenticity. The shadow, from Carl Jung's perspective, is like a hidden deposit within us, where we store everything that, for some reason, we have decided not to show the world. It's not something we consciously choose. Since childhood, we learn, often subtly, which traits and behaviors are acceptable and which are not. Society, culture, and even our families teach us to shape our personalities to fit norms and expectations. Everything that does not align with these expectations is relegated to the shadow. Imagine a child expressing their anger spontaneously. If that anger is repressed, criticized, or punished, the child quickly learns that this emotion is not acceptable. And so, anger is pushed into the shadow. Over time, this process repeats itself with other aspects. The desire for freedom, the need for affirmation, or even talents and interests that do not align with what is valued around them. The shadow then forms as a repository of parts of ourselves that do not disappear but remain hidden. Jung also reminds us that the shadow is not exclusively negative. It is true that it contains emotions we find uncomfortable, such as fear or envy. But it also houses repressed potentials, such as creativity, courage, and even joy. When we repress one aspect, we often end up repressing others related to it. Thus, the shadow is not a villain, but an unexplored territory full of hidden treasures. The dual nature of the shadow is fascinating. It contains both what we fear and what we long for. And as long as we remain unaware of it, these aspects will continue to influence our lives indirectly, shaping our choices and reactions. True freedom begins when we recognize and embrace the shadow as an integral part of who we are. We fear our shadow because we have been conditioned to avoid it. From an early age, we learn that certain emotions and behaviors are not acceptable. Deep sadness, intense anger, desires outside the norm, or even bold assertiveness. This social conditioning creates a narrative that we must always be controlled, positive, and aligned with external expectations. As a result, we develop an almost instinctual fear of confronting those parts of ourselves that do not fit this ideal. This fear is reinforced by our natural discomfort with the unknown. The shadow, being part of the unconscious, is a territory that we cannot fully access with logic or reason. It operates in the interstices of our thoughts and emotions, often manifesting indirectly, as in dreams, exaggerated reactions, or sudden impulses. Facing the shadow means entering this unknown territory, which may seem threatening. To avoid this confrontation, we project aspects of the shadow onto others. It's easier to identify undesirable traits in those around us than to recognize them in ourselves. When we are deeply disturbed by someone's behavior, whether arrogance, impatience, or selfishness, we are often reacting to something that also exists within us, but that we prefer not to admit. This projection can create conflicts, harm relationships, and keep us trapped in repetitive patterns. We fear the shadow because it challenges us to abandon the masks we have built to navigate the world. It invites us to question who we truly are beyond the roles we play and the stories we tell about ourselves. This resistance is natural, but it is also a sign that there is something important waiting to be discovered. When we find the courage to face this fear, we begin to uncover the deeper layers of our psyche, moving closer to a truth that is both uncomfortable and liberating. Embracing our shadow is an act of deep courage and self-compassion. It is an invitation to move beyond superficiality and dive into the depths of who we truly are. Although it may seem frightening at first, the benefits of integrating the shadow into our consciousness are transformative. Not only do we become more authentic, but we also unlock potential that often remains dormant. Integrating the shadow leads us to live authentically. When we deny parts of ourselves, we create an internal division. On the other hand, when we recognize and accept these parts, we become whole. This does not mean we must act impulsively on every desire or emotion, but that we are able to recognize them without judgment. This acceptance frees us from the masks we wear to please others or to protect ourselves, allowing our true essence to shine. Another powerful benefit is the unlocking of repressed potentialities. Often, the traits we relegate to the shadow include strengths and talents that we did not have the opportunity or permission to express. For example, someone who repressed their assertiveness for fear of appearing aggressive may discover a natural leadership ability upon integrating this quality. The shadow is a hidden treasure, containing not only the aspects we fear but also those that can propel us forward. This integration also transforms our relationships. When we recognize our shadow, we become more aware of our own judgments and projections. This helps us develop empathy, as we understand that the imperfections we see in others often reflect parts of ourselves. Relationships become deeper and more genuine when we are able to accept both our lights and our shadows, and those of others. Embracing the shadow is an act of self-love and growth. Instead of fearing it, we learn to see it as an ally, a source of wisdom that guides us toward a fuller and more integrated life. In this process, we discover that the shadow is not our enemy, but an essential part of our journey toward wholeness. Identifying the shadow is the first step to integrating it. Although it operates in the unconscious, there are clear signs of its presence in our lives. Projections, emotional triggers, and moments of self-reflection are some of the most accessible ways to begin recognizing these hidden aspects. It is as though the shadow leaves us clues, waiting for us to have the courage to follow them. Projections are perhaps the most evident way to identify our shadow. When we are deeply bothered by someone else's behavior, we are often projecting onto them something that we have repressed within ourselves. For example, when we criticize someone for being arrogant, we might be reacting to our own repressed need for recognition or confidence. Observing where we direct our judgments is a powerful tool to begin uncovering what we are ignoring about ourselves. Emotional triggers are another valuable indicator. Intense reactions that are disproportionate to a situation often point to something deeper. Perhaps a colleague's criticism or an apparently harmless comment sparks unexpected anger or sadness. These moments are invitations to ask ourselves, what is this emotion trying to tell me? What part of me is reacting so viscerally? Self-reflection is an essential practice in this process. Questions like, what traits or behaviors do I avoid admitting about myself? Or what do others say about me that I refuse to accept? Can open doors to a deeper understanding. These questions do not need to be answered all at once. The shadow reveals itself in layers, and each insight brings us closer to our truth. Recognizing the shadow requires honesty, but also compassion. It is not about judging or correcting, but about understanding and accepting. Each aspect we identify is an opportunity for growth, a step toward a more aligned and integrated life. The shadow cannot be confronted with haste or resistance. It requires patience and a willingness to listen to what it has to teach us. Working with the shadow is a practice that requires intention and commitment. It is not about confronting these aspects in a combative way, but about integrating them with care, curiosity, and respect. This process, often called shadow work, is a journey of self-discovery that transforms what was once a source of resistance into a source of personal power. One of the most effective tools for this work is journaling. Writing about our emotions and daily reactions allows us to bring to the surface aspects of the shadow that remain hidden in the unconscious. For example, by recording a moment of anger or judgment, we can explore questions like, why did this bother me so much? What does this reveal about me? This simple yet powerful practice creates a safe space to dialogue with our emotions without filters. Meditation and visualization are also valuable resources. Meditation helps us observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment, creating an internal environment of acceptance. Visualization allows us to imagine the integration of the shadow with the conscious self. A common exercise is to visualize the shadow as a figure or energy that you can approach with curiosity. What does it want to tell you? What does it need from you? This symbolic interaction can lead to profound and transformative insights. Creative exploration is another way to access and express the shadow. Activities like painting, dancing, or free writing allow repressed emotions to manifest without the constraints of logic. For example, drawing without worrying about the result or writing without thinking about structure can release aspects of the psyche that have no space to express themselves in daily life. This kind of spontaneous creation is a direct channel to access and integrate parts of us that were previously hidden. Working with the shadow doesn't have one unique path. Each practice offers a different way to explore and embrace these aspects of ourselves. What matters most is to approach this process with openness and patience, recognizing that each step, no matter how small, is a movement toward wholeness. Working with the shadow inevitably leads us to face profound discomfort. Feelings like guilt, shame, or fear may arise, challenging our willingness to continue. These moments, though difficult, are an essential part of the healing and integration process. It is by traversing this territory that we find true inner freedom. Acceptance and compassion are key when dealing with the shadow. Instead of judging ourselves for the feelings or traits that emerge, we can approach them with curiosity. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to teach me? What does this part of me need to feel heard? Treating the shadow with kindness creates a safe space where it can reveal itself without fear of rejection. Overcoming resistance is one of the biggest challenges in this work. It's natural to want to avoid discomfort, but running from it only perpetuates the patterns we are trying to transform. When we feel shame or guilt, these feelings can be seen as signs that we are touching something important. They show us where healing is most needed, inviting us to move forward, even when the path seems difficult. In moments of greater intensity, seeking support can be essential. Mentors, therapists, or spiritual practices can provide the guidance necessary to navigate these tough emotions. A therapist, for example, can help contextualize shadow insights, while a spiritual mentor can offer tools to integrate what has been discovered into a larger context of meaning. Facing discomfort is not an obstacle in shadow work, it's part of the path. Every difficult emotion we face is an opportunity to get to know ourselves more deeply and free ourselves from patterns that no longer serve us. By allowing ourselves to feel and process, we discover an inner strength we may not have even known we had. Just as individuals have a shadow, entire societies also harbor repressed and unacknowledged aspects, forming what Carl Jung called the collective shadow. This shadow manifests in prejudices, injustices, and conflicts that permeate the world. When communities, cultures, or even entire nations deny certain truths about themselves, these truths emerge in destructive ways, causing divisions and perpetuating suffering. The collective shadow reflects the repressed fears and desires of a group. Think of racial, gender, or class prejudices that continue to exist even in societies that profess equality and justice. These prejudices are symptoms of aspects of the collective psyche that have not yet been confronted. They thrive because it is easier to project discomfort onto others than to recognize the shared responsibility of creating a more compassionate world. Integrating the collective shadow begins with individual work. When each person chooses to look at their own prejudices and judgments, collective transformation becomes possible. For example, by questioning learned beliefs that sustain stereotypes or confronting our role in systems that perpetuate inequalities, we take important steps toward change. This personal reflection may seem small, but its ripples expand, influencing those around us. This integration does not mean ignoring or justifying the mistakes of the past, but facing them with honesty and responsibility. A society that recognizes its collective shadow is able to grow and evolve, creating space for true justice and connection. This requires courage, both from individuals and communities, to examine history, question current norms, and commit to a more balanced future. When we choose to confront our personal shadows, we are contributing to the healing of something much larger. Every act of empathy, every effort to understand the other, contributes to the dissolution of the collective shadow. It is a powerful reminder that our personal transformation is never just about us. It reverberates in the world, making it a more harmonious and compassionate place. The shadow is not just a collection of fears or weaknesses. It also contains the potential for profound transformation. Becoming what we fear does not mean succumbing to fear, but embracing the authenticity hidden beneath it. It is a powerful reframe. What once seemed like a threat to our identity may, in fact, be the portal to the most complete and true version of ourselves. When we look at the shadow with courage, we discover that many of the traits we repressed are in fact, forces waiting to be unleashed. Repressed anger, for example, can be transformed into assertiveness. Insecurity can become self-awareness. The desire for control, when understood, can reveal a natural capacity for leadership. Every aspect we fear contains energy that, when integrated, can propel us to new levels of expression and accomplishment. Inspirational stories show us the power of this transformation. Think of people who faced repressed aspects of themselves to find strength and purpose. An artist who struggled with self-criticism may transform this struggle into works that inspire others. A leader who confronts their fears of failure may develop a humility that strengthens their relationships and decisions. These examples remind us that fear is not the end, but the beginning of something new. It is important to remember that this journey has no definitive end. Shadow work is an ongoing process, for there will always be deeper layers to explore. It is not about reaching a perfect state, but about living in harmony with all parts of who we are. Each step on this path makes us more whole, more connected, and more capable of living authentically. When we become what we fear, we are not transforming into something we are not. We are, in fact, releasing what has always been inside us, waiting to be recognized. And in this release, we discover that there is nothing to fear, only to live. When you embrace your shadow, you are not just facing your fears. You are, in fact, freeing yourself from the limitations they impose, allowing all parts of you to coexist in harmony. This journey of integration is not a process of denial or rejection, but of deep acceptance. Every fragment of your psyche, light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, contributes to the totality of who you are. Shadow work is an act of courage. It is a commitment to looking within, facing what is uncomfortable, and embracing what is true. When we choose to walk this path, we are not just transforming ourselves. We are contributing to a more compassionate and authentic world. For as we become more whole, our light shines brighter, inspiring others to do the same. Now the invitation is before you. Begin your own shadow work. Perhaps it starts with something simple like a moment of journaling or a meditation. Or maybe it's an internal dialogue, a question that resonates deeply. Which parts of me are waiting to be seen? Whatever the step, remember that every move toward self-understanding is a move toward freedom. If this message resonated with you, like this video and subscribe to the channel for more reflections like this. Share your experiences or questions in the comments. Your words may be the start of a transformative conversation. And remember, the journey toward wholeness is unique for each of us, but we are never alone. As you work with your shadow, you are not only discovering who you are creating who you wish to be. Thank you for being here and choosing to explore the depths of yourself. Until next time, and may your journey be illuminated by your own courage and truth.